Today we are talking about managing your emotions. So for all of you that feel like you are emotional, you don't know how to manage your emotions, we are going to talk about controlling your emotions versus managing them. How do you self-regulate? And then how do you handle your emotions in a way that strengthens your relationship rather than tear you guys apart? My membership ladies, you should have gotten your study guide along with your extra exercises.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So that you guys don't have to take as much notes. I've helped you so much. Oh, that makes me so happy to hear. Somebody else sent me an inbox, and it really makes me happy to hear that this stuff is helping guys. Let's go ahead and jump in. If this is your guys' first time joining, welcome. This is Emotional Intelligence 101. This is week 6. We have been talking about different aspects of emotional intelligence. We are still in the self-awareness portion of this class where we have been identifying, how do you identify your emotions, what emotional intelligence is, what are your emotional triggers. Like, we've had several classes. If you have not seen them, they are all available on YouTube, so you can go back and watch those. And so we're still in the self-awareness piece. And so this week we are talking about how do you manage your emotions. So for those of you that feel like you get too emotional and your emotions control you and you don't know how to, manage them, that's what we're talking about today. Let's go over the rules. If this is your guys' first time, you guys know I have some rules. Number 1 is to be honest with yourself. You cannot grow, you cannot do better if you're not honest with yourself. This probably should have been number 1. This has to be a safe space. The things that we talk about in this class are sensitive in nature, and I absolutely require it to be a safe space for everybody. Another rule I have is no projecting. You could talk about your experiences, but don't project your experience on other people. And then the last rule is no generalizing, right? All men this, all women that. Again, you can speak from your experience, but do not put your experience on everybody else, right? Because most of the time it's not true. Last thing, I am not a therapist. I am a coach. Therapy looks backwards. And it is figuring out how you got here. Coaching is forward looking. So you want to improve your communication. How can I help you do that? Okay, so those are the difference. So we have a question here about the membership community. So I do have a membership community. If you join the membership community, you get the opportunity to watch class via Zoom. And we have like the after hour sessions on Zoom where you guys can actually talk back to me. And then we are also, actually, I need you guys to stick around today because I want to plan our group coaching session. I want to make sure it's a date that works for as many of you as possible. So that you get access to exclusive resources. There's bi-monthly group coaching sessions, these classes, and yes, you do get the extra materials, the handouts, the study guides if you join the community so that you don't have to do as much note taking. So yes. That looked a little, okay. So is everybody ready to get started? Let me know that you're ready. Ready. Fantastic. So today we are talking about how to effectively manage your emotions, right? Specifically in relationships when you are in the middle of conflict, or there's heightened emotion, or there's tension, right? And so today we're going to talk about the difference between controlling your emotions versus managing them. We're going to talk about how do you self-regulate. And then we're going to talk about how do you handle your emotions in a way that strengthens your relationship rather than tear it down. Okay, so we're going to talk about understanding emotional regulation, recognizing how do you recognize when your emotions are getting ready to take over, and then I'll give you practical tips on how you can self-regulate. Part of this, you guys are going to have to come up with the answer, but I can give you ideas, but only you know what works for you. So Let me know in the comments if you have ever said something during an argument that you later regret, or behaved in a way that you had to say, dang, maybe I went too far. Maybe I shouldn't have done it. Let me know in the comments. Yes, definitely. Okay. So let me give you some examples in case you are not sure what that looks like. Let me give you, it's absolutely over here. Let me give you some examples of what it looks like when you do not manage your emotions well. Did this break? Okay, that's fine. So you react before thinking. You say things in the heat of the moment. You respond impulsively without considering the consequences. Your emotions dictate your tone, your words, your action, right? This is when you are yelling, screaming, hollering. Okay. Another sign that you struggle with emotional regulation, you don't pause before you respond. Right? You feel an immediate urge to defend yourself. Right? You will interrupt the conversation. You don't let the other person finish speaking. And then you have a difficult time holding space for being discomfort without lashing out. So later on, I will talk about how you can still be angry and honor your emotions without outwardly expressing that anger. And you can still show up as a partner, as a mom, as whomever, even though you are still experiencing those emotions. Another sign you struggle with emotional regulation, you get overwhelmed easily by strong emotions. You shut down, you avoid, you withdraw when they feel too big. You feel drained after you've been experiencing these emotions for a long period of time, and they feel like they're too much to handle. I'm stepping on your toes. That's fine. That's why I'm here. You get stuck in an emotional cycle. So you replay past arguments and you dwell on them over and over again. You bring them up over and over again. You don't let things go. You hold grudges. Your feelings and your emotions, they linger for days. Let's see, what else? You use unhealthy coping mechanisms. You lash out at people instead of addressing the issue. You try to numb your emotions. Maybe you smoke, or you go have a drink or a glass when you're feeling emotional to try to regulate them. Or you try to suppress them without dealing with them. You take things personally, even when it's not about you. You assume the negative intent of everybody. Anybody that's talking to you. You assume that there's always a negative intent about you. You feel attacked during the arguments, even if your partner didn't even mean to. Maybe they're just sharing how they feel, but you feel attacked. You feel like your emotions are controlled by how other people treat you. You're giving them the power to dictate how you respond. Hey, Cashmere and Cheese. Right? So these are all signs that you struggle with emotional regulation. And so I already see in the comments that you guys are saying, thank you, Jen, that you guys are seeing that this is true for you. So let me ask you, I was getting ready to talk to you about how a poor emotional regulation impacts your relationship, because some of you have said this is you, or you identify with some of the things in that list. I want you guys to tell me how your lack of emotional regulation has impacted your relationships, or with anybody, whether it's your partner, your parents, your kids. This is blowing me. I don't like the way this looks. I promise I'm not fat, yo. These jeans is just cutting. That's baby spot. That means you in the right place. You just left your job of 13 years for lack of control. Like you lost control at work, you're saying? You hold resentment. People think before they speak around me now. Always arguing for no reason. You guys over here, tell me if you identify with, if you say that you have an inability to regulate your emotions, tell me how that has impacted you. You quick to go off. Thank you, Jerry. It's draining. I make people feel unsafe to speak on their emotions. Yeah. So you guys are aware of it, right? And so the good thing is that now that you are aware of it, we can work on it. You take over the conversation. You overthink things. Yeah. All of this is true. So you guys are aware of how this impacts your relationships. And, I thought somebody said that they're embarrassed by it. Right? It is what it is. But the good thing is that you are here. You have your notebook. You want to take notes so that we can start working on this. So let's talk about what emotional regulation is, right? So this is the second component of emotional intelligence, right? First is self-awareness, being able to identify and understand your emotions. The second component of emotional intelligence is being able to regulate. Okay? So regulating your emotions, that is the ability to manage how you respond, right? Making sure that even though you are experiencing these emotions, you are responding in a healthy way. You are responding in a constructive way. Let me tell you what it is not. Emotional regulation does not mean that you suppress your emotions. That does not mean that you hold on to them and you just bite your tongue until you explode. It does not mean that you push them aside and you just refuse to address them. All right? That is not what emotional regulation is. And so why should you care about it? Why does it... Self-awareness is your ability to recognize and understand your own emotions. So why do you care about it in your relationships, right? So some of you guys are already aware of it because you're talking about the impact that it has on your relationships. But when you are able to self-regulate, it improves your conversation. You can have productive conversations about the conflict that you are facing instead of being combative and having arguments escalate and you get nowhere. All right. It helps you to prevent these emotional outbursts that you later regret. And then it also allows you to respond instead of react, right? That is always the goal. You want to make sure that you are consciously deciding how to respond to a situation. You don't want to react out of emotion. Right? That is never the goal. Because if you're reacting out of emotion, that means you can't really help yourself, right? I tell people this, like, you feel how you feel, like you have a right to your feelings. I've showed you guys the brain picture multiple times. The brain is wired to give emotions the upper hand, right? So you're not necessarily wrong for experiencing certain emotions. You can't help the emotions that you experience, but you are responsible for how you manage them. Okay. So let's talk about how do you know when your emotions are getting ready to take over. Here are some signs that are examples or indicators that your emotions are getting ready to take over. Number one, your heart may start racing and you have a hard time breathing. You feel an intense urge to say something cutting or get the last word. You feel overwhelmed and you need to shut down and walk away. So I'm a shut down person. You replay the argument in your head before it's even over. And you use personal attacks, attacking the person that you're talking to, as opposed to attacking the issue. All right. Do you guys know when you're about to lose it? Do you guys know when you're about to snap? Like, what signs or what indications do you have for you specifically that if I don't walk away right now, it's about to be a problem? Tell me, what are your signs? All right, because it's going to be different for everybody. I know for me, I become a mute. I'm going to stop talking. I gotta stop talking. I get so frustrated that the best thing to do, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the next section about regulation, the best thing for me to do is to literally zip my lips. You start feeling tense. You get flushed. What about you guys over here? How do you know that you're getting ready to lose it? The heart racing for sure. Your heart starts racing, or you breathe heavy and walk away. Yeah. You tap on things. You're always reacting. I try my hardest not to react. Even when I try to walk away, I still feel like people are poking a bear. They might be, but it's up to you to respond, to figure out how to respond to it. Like, I want you guys to remember that nobody is responsible for handling your emotions. Nobody has to deal with your little attitude. They don't. And so it is your responsibility to be mindful about how you are expressing your emotions and making sure you are mindful and aware of how that expression is going to affect the people around you. All right, so the earlier that you recognize when your emotions are building up, the more control you will have over how you respond. Thank you, Nuya. All right, let me give you an example of how things may escalate. Your partner makes a joke that you find hurtful. Instead of saying, I didn't find that funny, you say something back to hurt them. Right? Why? Because your emotions escalated so quickly and you threw your gloves on before you can even think about it. You have to scream to get it out. Look, you gotta, whatever works for you, right? There is no one size fits all. Right? This is why it kind of makes it difficult to teach this way, because everybody is going to need something different. There are going to be different things that work for everybody. So let's talk about how you self-regulate. So you guys know what you do. You know what your usual responses are. Why do you feel like you respond that way? Like, what is it about you that feels like you have to get this out? Or you got to get the last word? Or you feel attacked? You feel unheard? You wasn't allowed to speak up as a child. That is a trigger. We talked about emotional triggers a couple of weeks ago. Feeling used, feeling disrespected. You got to defend yourself. And so those things are not terrible. If you are in a situation, or if you're the type of person that you feel attacked and so you got to throw the gloves on, instead of trying to hit them back, explain to them how that made you feel. You feel overwhelmed with your emotions and feel the need to let it. How do you usually let it out, Trikia?
So, I mean, it depends, because, like, for me, my job that I'm currently working, it's sometimes can be intense because, of course, people don't like. Basically, I enforce the rules at my job.
Okay.
And sometimes I'll having to speak with people who are anxious and don't want to have the conversation. And sometimes they speak when they're antsy and racing, like they're just letting everything out at once. And it's like I'm not able to speak in that moment. So then I instantly also get antsy and racy, ready to let my information out. And it gets bad.
So what do you think would help you in those moments? Like taking a step back, like let's look at you, let's say you're looking at you in the window, like through the office glass. What do you think would help that situation? Like when your staff or your coworkers, whomever you're enforcing the rules against, when they're getting antsy and they are coming at you with this energy, because that's the thing, like it's hard to not reciprocate the energy that you are getting. But what do you think? What do you think could help in that moment?
What I have started doing is just kind of like giving warnings. Okay. So like one lady, she wasn't necessarily cursing at me, but it was the fact that she was cursing. I was like, I understand you frustrated, but let's calm down to foul language. And or another thing I'll do if I feel like I'm not going to be able to speak for a good few minutes, I work from home, so I work on the phones, and I just flip my speaker piece up. So, and breathe deeply if they can't really hear it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think another thing you might be able to try is to try to remind yourself that it's not about you, right? Don't take it personal. This person has to get this out, and this is the only way, because they don't come to my class. This is the only way they know how to get those things out. And so give them, right? I just wrote in my paper, well, not just, but space and grace. Give them the space to have, if you have to, unfortunately, right? You might be the only way that they know how to get these things out. And so you might have to hold that space for them, or try and revisit the conversation when they're in a better space. Right? Because again, I told you guys, you can't be emotional and logical at the same time. And so if you are dealing with somebody that is in that emotional state, you're wasting your breath trying to have a productive conversation. The brain does not allow you to do both. Kashmir, you said you try to give people 3 warnings before you react because you don't like to yelling at people. You don't like people yelling at you. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes they were upset before they spoke. That is true, right? So here's the thing, right? When it comes to other people, a lot of times it's not about you, right? And I have this conversation multiple times. How people are out here reacting in this world and how they respond to this world or even to you, I would say 8 times out of 10 actually has nothing to do with you. So many people are carrying around baggage and they are damaged, and not damaged, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but they are having, like, they have emotional trauma and they are bringing their past with them. Like, some people have been through a lot of stuff. Some of you may have been through a lot, right? And you never know how things are going to affect somebody, right? We are all the sum of our experiences. Like, we are the person we are today because of everything we've done or everything we've experienced in our life. And so you never truly understand why somebody may be responding to you this way or reacting to you this. They might just be really depressed and miserable. And so that's one thing that I try to do is I don't take anything personal. And people are like, how are you so calm? Because it's not about me. It's not about me. I was talking to, she might be on here, but I was talking to a friend, and she texted me one day. She was upset because somebody else had, I think they were out somewhere, and the person like was getting ready to leave but didn't say anything. And so my friend that texted me was like, how could she leave me without saying anything? Girl, it was not about you. It was not about her leaving you. She was ready to go. It wasn't I'm leaving her here, I'm going over here. No. Most of the time, it's not about you. Now, they may behave in a effed up manner, but I found that recognizing that it's not about me and not taking things personal, it made my life easier. It's like, dang, she left me. That's crazy. She wanted to go home that bad. I'll find my way home. What changed my mindset to understand that? So the first instance that came to mind, how did I stop taking things so personally? Let me think about that. Because the first example that came up, I don't think that is a good example for that. I don't know if I just started paying attention to people. And so I used to say, like, how people treat you have nothing to do with you. And I know that I got that idea actually from the last guy that I was dating. And at one point, I was wondering, like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I not good enough, right? Because now his girlfriend, now his wife that he got married on my birthday to, whatever, she actually looks like me. Like, he definitely has a type. And for a minute, I was saying, why am I questioning why I wasn't good enough? And then I had to think about it. I'm an awesome partner. Never had an argument. Like, I show up. I'm supportive. I'm a safe space. Like, there were no issues between us. And I had to realize that was his decision to go and be with somebody else. It had nothing to do with what I did or what I did not do. Right? That was his decision. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. He chose to do something else. And so I think after I learned it there, like, how people treat you had nothing to do with you. And I just started applying it or paying attention in other areas. I'm like, okay, that actually didn't have anything to do with me. Or so we're going to talk about empathy in 2 weeks. And so I try to see things from other people's perspective. It's not about me. Now, I might also be affected by it, right? Because two things can be true at once, but sometimes the initial decision actually doesn't have anything to do with you. So I think it comes down to empathy a little bit, right? I try to understand things from their point of view, right? And so, right, talking about my ex, there was nothing, like, because he still wanted to be my best friend, like, there weren't any issues between us, right? So the thinking that I had of what's wrong with me, why am I not good enough, like, why does he want to be with somebody else? Because he wants to. Because he wants to. Right? So my friend that texted me, like, how could she leave me or not say anything? Because she was ready to go. Effed up as it may be, it wasn't about you. She wasn't trying to leave you personally. Is taking things personally similar to taking yourself too serious? How can you take yourself too seriously? Kiara, what do you mean by taking yourself too serious? And you just got to understand, like, or even that whole idea, like, I know you guys have probably seen on social media when they say, like, check on your strong friend. If they're not reaching out, they probably going through something too. Yeah, I'm not calling because I don't want to talk to you. I'm calling because my life is falling apart over here. And me and my friends do a very good job. You okay? No, but I'll call you back when my life is together. We're very good at that. I haven't heard from you all right over there. Nope. In fact, that should be a sign that something might be wrong. If somebody is not doing the things that they usually do, they're not checking on you, they're not texting you as much as they used to, check on them. Something might be wrong. And it has nothing to do with you. Again, two things can be true. So yes, you can still be affected by it. Right? I'm not saying that your feelings cannot be hurt by whatever it is, but it helps you to not take things so personally. Okay? So that's another thing that you can do to, regulate emotionally. What's some other things that you guys feel like would help you regulate? So what you mean is, suppose somebody jokes about you and you don't think it's funny, even though it was they meant no harm. So I don't think that's taking yourself too serious. You're allowed to have boundaries. And if they may not be aware of how something is going to affect you, right? I would imagine that they wouldn't have said it if they knew it was going to hurt your feelings. And then I think is you just speak up. Hey, that hurt my feelings. Hey, I didn't like it. Depending on how close you guys are, explain why. Oh, that triggers or that reminded me of when I was bullied when I was a kid. Right? It's not up to the other person to decide what is okay and what's not. If that's a boundary for you, if you do not like it, right? Then it's a no. Right? That's along the same lines of somebody telling you overreacting. You don't get to dictate how I respond. When they say you're overreacting, it's because they don't think they would respond that way if they were in your shoes, but you're not in my shoes. You're not me. Right? You don't get to dictate how I respond, right? If I say that hurt my feelings, if I go crying, that's not up to you to say that is incorrect. It absolutely requires a sense of vulnerability, right? I'm assuming that this is your partner or somebody that you can trust to have these conversations with, right? If it's a coworker or just, that's not funny and you could leave it at that. Oh, I didn't find that funny. Another tip for self-regulating, box breathing, right? Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, right? That may also help you, take a beat. Sometimes you might have to just talk to yourself. Okay, you don't have to respond right now. Because if I say something right now, girl, it's going to be disrespectful. And I'm trying not to do that. This next one, I actually just learned about this one when I was doing research for class today. They call it the stop method. And so get y'all pen so y'all can write this down. So the stop method, S is for stop. When you feel intense emotion, stop and pause to prevent a reaction. So literally shut up. T, take a step back. So take time to take a breath and figure out the situation. O is to observe. So once you feel calm enough, observe your thoughts, check your facts, and ensure you're not jumping to conclusions or overreacting. And then the P is proceed mindfully. Consider possible outcomes from a calm and mindful place. So S is stop. T is take a step back. O is observe. And P is proceed mindfully. Yes, absolutely. Understanding yourself and knowing that raising voices doesn't mean it's time to talk. I think if you are raising your voice, it's actually the wrong time to talk. We're going to talk more about this when we get into communications in a few weeks. But I've told y'all this multiple times that I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to talk to people too soon. You cannot be emotional and logical at the same time. The brain doesn't allow it. And so if you are still experiencing these emotions at a heightened level, you can't have a productive conversation, right? This is when you start saying stuff that you later regret. The stop method. S is for stop. T is for take a step back. O is for observe. So once you're calm, look at what the situation is. Is it a fact or a feeling? Are you jumping to conclusions? And then P is to proceed mindfully. Once you are calm, think about how you want to respond. Now, I also say this all the time. I'm not saying that you won't cuss the person out. I'm just saying make sure you think and you actively choose to cuss the person out. Don't cuss the person out because you're just reacting out of emotion. If you're going to cuss them out because you've taken time, you thought about it, you're calm now, and you still decide that they need to be cussed out. Okay? It's about choosing your response. All right. And so when you are, let's go back to this stop method, right? You stop, like, so whatever you got to do to shut up. I don't care if you got to zip your lips, if you got to walk away, do whatever. Just stop talking. All right. It's hard for somebody to argue by themselves. So if you stop talking, after a while, they recognize that you stopped talking. All right. That's the one that works for me the most. If I'm frustrated, if I feel like this person is not hearing me, we're just going around and around in circles. Right? And then they usually like, why you get quiet? Because I was trying to explain to you and I feel like you wasn't hearing me. You just kept talking over me like you weren't. So that's what I do. So when you are taking a step back and you're trying to think, right? This is when you go back to what we talked about last week and how do you process your emotions in terms of make sure you identify the emotion that you are experiencing. Dig deeper than the primary emotion. Get to the secondary emotion if you can. Right? What triggered this? Is it something that they said? Is it something that they did? Right? Think about the best way to respond. Are you responding to a feeling that you have, meaning your interpretation of a situation? Right? We talked about facts versus feelings, and there's a difference. And your emotions are one thing. And we talked about, emotions versus feelings. Right? You experience a certain emotions, you feel a certain way, and how you interpret emotions versus feelings. Right? You experience a certain emotions, you feel a certain way, and how you interpret. Right? Reframe how you think. Right? This is where the feelings come in. Let's say your partner forgot it was your anniversary. Instead of, you don't care about me. You don't even care about me. How could you forget our anniversary? No. So you're not going to say you don't care about me, because I'm sure they do. Instead, you're going to be a grown-up, an adult, and say, hey, you forgetting about the anniversary really made me sad. It made me feel unseen or unimportant. Right? The whole pettiness that people like to do. I ain't going to get into pettiness tonight, but yep, I feel like X when you did. Next time, can we do X, Y, and Z? Yep, that's right, Nay. Okay. So when you're taking a step back, name the emotion, identify the trigger, pause before you respond, reframe your thinking if you need to, and then choose how you are going to respond intentionally. So I've thrown out several tips that you're guilty of the pettiness. I could be a petty, not petty LaBelle. Yeah, it is. And I get it. You gotta, it's definitely hard, but you gotta think about what's the point and what are you trying to accomplish. So I've given you guys a few different tips that you can use based on what you feel like your problem is or your area of growth. Give me one thing that you want to implement to help you regulate your emotions better. Give me one thing that you think you can do to regulate your emotions better. The stop method. Mm-hmm. You could be really petty. Yeah. Oh, let me see. I'll put them in the comments. Give me at least one thing that you're going to do to work on regulating your emotion. The box method, the stop method. The stop method. Yep, I'm liking it. What about you guys over here? What are you guys going to do? The stop method. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. Stay calm and talk to yourself more. Yeah, I don't care if you got to be out there looking like a crazy person. If that's what you got to do, then that's what you got to do. And if you think about it, right, when people call somebody emotional, oh, they just so emotional, they too emotional, they're usually talking about how they express their emotions. They're not talking about the fact that you have them. right? Because I don't think anybody would deny that you are allowed to have emotions. It's usually how you express it. And so people know that if you become the emotional person, then, you know, like you said, people are going to stop talking to you. People are going to feel like they can't share anything with you. They're not going to be able to give you, you know, correction or whatever it is, feedback, or, you know, any of those things that you mentioned. I did not come up with the stop method. So let's talk about your emotional regulation and relationships. So how does it affect your partner? If you escalate, they're going to escalate. If you stay calm, they're going to calm down at some point, right? It's very hard to argue by yourself, right? People ask me that all the time too. Like, well, if I am, you know, regulating, and what if they're not? Are they going to argue with themselves? Right? Like, it's just, right? And so it also means that people may start to walk on eggshells around you. Oh, I don't want to trip them off. I don't feel like hearing his mouth. Right? But if you take the time to pause and think about what you or how you're going to respond, and not be passive aggressive and not be petty, right? That is what's going to push the relationship further. Instead of holding a grudge because they forgot something, tell them that they forgot it and how it made you feel. Now, I'm not saying that the emotions are going to go away right away, because they're not. Right? You got to let them run their course. But at least you're not holding on to it, and you've at least expressed it to them. That usually gives you some sense of relief. All right, so when you stay in control, or when you are able to manage and regulate your emotions, it allows you to communicate better. It allows for you to resolve conflict a lot quicker, because I'm just going to tell you how I feel and how it made me feel and what I need to do differently moving forward, as opposed to holding a grudge. Because now you're going to have an attitude for days over something that I could have just told you a couple days ago and gotten it over with. You need to work on understanding the emotion behind your triggers. So I don't know if you were in class. So we did a class on emotional triggers, and we did a class on identifying emotions, your primary emotions, feelings, and then your secondary emotions. So if you have not, Blue Horizon, if you weren't in those classes, I would go watch those. A person that won't argue pisses you off. Don't make you mad and not say nothing. Yeah, I don't argue. Like, people be like, how don't you argue? Because I don't raise your voice at me. Oh my God. Yeah, I don't argue. It's not something I'm interested in. It's not productive either. It just means we are lacking emotional intelligence at the moment, and we are both consumed with our emotions. So managing your emotions is not the same thing as controlling our emotions. I know we like to think that we can control our emotions. Oh, I'm just not gonna feel nothing. I'ma just act like nothing happened. You a lie. You a big lie. There is no switch that you can flip for your emotions to just turn off. All right, there is no switch. All right, and this is also why I made a video about this, that I don't necessarily agree with that advice, right? Never go to sleep angry. I don't agree with that, because you can't turn your emotions off. Sometimes you need to sleep on it. Sometimes you need that break overnight. Now, that's not to say that you don't still have those emotions. You do. That also doesn't mean that you can't still show up for your partner, right? Just because you are experiencing this emotion, once you tell them about it and you have this conversation, you're still allowed to feel some type of way, but that doesn't mean that you have to neglect your partner. You tried that before and it made it worse. What part did you try, cashmere, and it made it worse? Yeah, I definitely don't argue. You tend to hang up your phone when your partner starts yelling. Yeah, no, we can for sure talk about it, but I'm not yelling and screaming and all of that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So pretty much sometimes I do that method where I used to do where my feelings will be involved and I'd be like, okay, like the switch, just turn it off. Like I have no feelings. I don't care attitude. And then internally I do care, but I come off as if I don't care. And then my friend's like, well, I thought you didn't care. But internally I'm like, I did care.
Yep.
But
yeah, you still care. And so all you're doing is just tucking them away until they resurface in another area. Right? There's a thing called misplaced emotions. Like that's a thing. And somebody can ask you one little thing and you might snap on them. It's not because of what they asked you. It's because you have all these other emotions that you have not dealt with, that you're carrying around. And so at any little thing, you ever met somebody that's always angry? Or always got an attitude? Yeah. Again, it's not about you. It's about wherever, whatever they have going on in their life. You have to release. Like, you can only carry but so much. Yes, Jasmine, you're going to still continue with your daily routine, but I'm still angry. And that's a part of being emotionally intelligent. Right? You giving yourself space and grace to have your emotions. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you how I feel. That does not mean just because I told you how I feel that I'm over it. It just means that hopefully we have come to a resolution so that this does not happen again. But you got to let your emotions run their course. Right? So controlling is when you are avoiding them or you suppress them or you pretend that you are not affected by whatever happened. Right? This is when you hold stuff in and then you explode later. This is what you just said, Cashmere, right? Acting like something doesn't bother you. And then maybe you bring it up later. Versus managing your emotions. This is when you're acknowledging how you are feeling. This is when you're processing how you are feeling. And then you are consciously thinking about how you want to respond. You want to say hi? Here comes your friend, guys. Come on. Come in and say hi. Say hi, Bentley. You say hi, Ben. Say hi. Every week he has to come and say hi to you guys. They say, hey, Ben. So let's talk about, for those of you that feel like you got to have the last word. Because I think that is also a part of emotional regulation. Right? If you have the urge to say one more thing. I think where that comes from, it's a few things. Wanting to be right. Feeling unheard or misunderstood. And this is some of the things that you guys said earlier. All right. If you have unprocessed emotions, right? You don't take the time to process it so you can share everything that you need to say at once. And so you got to keep coming back to it. I think another reason, and you guys already highlighted this, that you feel like you got to have the last word is you feel attacked. Right? So the example I have down here is, I don't want to argue about this anymore. And you say, oh, I guess you're just going to ignore how I feel then. Now the argument just going to start all over again. Right? So it's important to know emotional maturity is knowing when it's time to be quiet for a second. Maybe you need to revisit this later. Right? Having a last word. And so if this is a situation of you feel attacked, I think you and your partner need to have a conversation about how you communicate. Right? Because if you feel attacked, likely that means they are talking about your actions, your behavior, something you did, rather than how it made them feel, right? I've mentioned this before to you guys, right? You want to keep the focus on how it made you feel, not the person's actions. And so if you feel attacked, right, when you're in a better space, right, when you guys are both calm, I think that might be the time to have that conversation. Like, you know, when we have these conversations, I feel attacked because of X, Y, and Z. when you said, but you got to be specific, right? When you said X, Y, and Z, I felt attacked because whatever. Can we focus on how it makes you feel as opposed to my action? I think another thing that you might need to work on when it comes to emotional regulation is hitting below the belt. You mad, you hurt, so you want them to be mad and hurt. You're trying to win the argument. Right? You're deflecting your own emotions. Right? This might be a defense mechanism. Take the gloves off. You got to take the gloves off. All right, throwing stuff back up in their face. It's a huge no. All right, throwing stuff back up in their face. It's a huge no. Jasmine, right? And so this is, how do you kind of break these cycles? Right? This one, I think you have to remember, what's the goal of this? Like, what is the point of, why are you just wanting to argue? Right? That is not the goal. The argument, to win the argument, is not the goal. To be right is not the goal. Y'all are both right. Two things can be true at once. You both have a right to whatever emotions you are experiencing. So it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's not about winning the argument. It has to be you two against the issue. Hey, TD. Right? So I think that's the first thing that you gotta, right, with the pettiness and hitting it below the belt, like, you gotta understand that it's not you versus your partner, or at least it should not be you versus your partner. Right? You should not start attacking them personally, hitting below the belt, throwing things in their face. Like, it's just not cool, and it's just not helpful for the relationship, because what happens is, I've had several conversations with couples where we have worked through the issue, but what we could not work through is what was said when they were upset. You can't unring a bell. And so now we don't work through the issue, but you don't talk about my mom, and now that's still, I got a problem that you talk about my mom. All right, maybe the issue originally was boundaries, and somehow my mom caught a stray in the middle of that conversation. We done worked on the boundaries that you want to be in place, but now the fact that you talked about my mom when you were upset, trying to make me angry, what do we do about that? Right? So I don't think sometimes people recognize how you can make your partner feel, even if you don't mean it. Oh, I was just angry, but it still hurt. Right? So I think that's the first thing. Like, you have to remember why you are with this person. Right? Wanting to hurt your person and all of that's not cool at all. It has to be you against the issue. Y'all two against the issue. Even if the issue is between you two, right? Let's say you feel overwhelmed because how responsibilities are allocated in terms of the kids and the housework. Let's say it's not even. Right? Let's say you do more. You do more with the kids, and you still got to cook, and you still got to go to work. So let's say you feel overwhelmed. You're not going to go to you should not go to your partner and say, you don't do nothing around this house. You're so lazy. It's not helpful. Instead, it is, I feel overwhelmed. Can we talk about how things are split up, or who does what? Right? Now it's both of you trying to figure out the solution to this problem, as opposed to coming and attacking your partner, calling them lazy and saying they don't do anything around the house, or they don't do anything with the kids, or they're not doing enough. Right? or just being silent and walking around cleaning up the house, slamming stuff, being extra aggressive, pushing the chairs in, well, speak up. They should know I need help. Did you ask them? Forget the fact that they should know. Let's say they don't know. You having an attitude, having to do the laundry and fold while the kids are crying or playing, and they still come to ask you and tell you they want a snack and they want some juice, as opposed to you holding a grudge. It's a lot quicker to just say, hey babe, can you do X, Y, and Z? It's a lot quicker. It doesn't matter if they should already know. Maybe they should know. But it's going to make your life easier if you just ask in 2 seconds. I'm trying to put these clothes away. Can you get little Kiki some juice? What if they have an attitude whenever you ask them for help? So I think same thing, same conversation about being overwhelmed. If they got an attitude, let them have an attitude. Did it get done? Let them have an attitude. Just like a kid. When you tell a kid to go clean up their room, they got an attitude, but the room gets clean. It gets clean. I don't care about your little funky attitude. It's done. Right? They got an attitude because they don't want to do it. They don't got nothing to do with you. It's done. You need help. You used to have an attitude and talk crap at the same time. And so, Mama Spliff, this is common. You say your partner wants to do everything on his own time. Is it important that it gets done when you want it to get done, or is it important that it gets done? Right? I ask the same question when people like, oh, I don't like the way he did it, so now I got to do everything. Is it important that he does it the way you want it done, or that it's done? Right? And if it is a situation that there is like a timeline, or be specific. Can you put the trash out tonight because it's coming in the morning? And if they still don't, guess what? They're an adult. Sometimes you gotta let them fall on their face. I had one client that I was working with, and she was overwhelmed because she felt like she had to double back and double check everything that her husband did. And I said, you sound like his mother. I said, what would happen if you didn't double check? And she said it probably wouldn't get done. I said, what would happen if it didn't get done? He got to learn at some point. Like, if you are always jumping in to save the day, yeah, I'm going to let you save the day too. I'm always told that if I need or should have done things the way she feels that it should have been said, yeah, or done. But my thing is, it's usually more than one way to do something. And so sometimes I have this conversation a lot with women. You got to let go of some type of control. You either complain about having to do everything, but then complain that it's not done the way that you want when you want it done. Sometimes you can't have it both ways, sis. Like, you can't. You got to pick your battles. And so what's more important? Do you need it done a certain way? I was having a conversation, and a friend of mine was complaining that her husband didn't do enough. And then she said in the same breath, but I don't really want him to do it. Like, she didn't want him dressing their child because he wasn't going to do it the way that she would. Is the child naked? Who cares if it's not an outfit that you would want to put on him? All right. So sometimes it is, you guys got to understand when to pick your battles. Speak up. We're going to talk so much more about this when we get to communication. But speak up. Right? Make sure that you are pausing before you go to speak to somebody. Right? Ask yourself, is this going to push us closer, bring us closer, or push us further apart? Me saying this, is this going to get us closer or push us apart? Make sure you speak up without attacking the person. I felt like when you did on this date, moving forward, can you do X, Y, and Z to make sure that I don't feel like this again? And then take responsibility for your words, right? Don't we talking about no generalizing, right? You always, you never. It's not true, right? Right. So emotional regulation is something that it takes time. It's something that you guys have to work at. And I think it starts with changing your mindset. The pettiness, the wanting to hold grudges. Oh, thank you guys. Right? That's not cool. That's not what we are in this relationship for. Right? That is not what's going to lead to a long, healthy relationship. And you have to figure out, how do I give myself the space and grace to have these emotions without impacting everybody else around me, right? Let's say your emotions, let's say you cut yourself. How do you handle that cut without bleeding on everybody around you? Because again, your emotions are your responsibility. They do not have to deal with your attitude. Think about how your attitude is making other people, those around you, feel. Right? So you have to work on regulating your emotions. Right? It's not this is just the way I am. I'm just emotional. That's not cool. All right, so let me give you your homework. So you already had the reflection question. The reflection question was, what emotions are hardest for you to regulate? How do they impact your relationship? Well, we kind of talked about that in the beginning. This is your homework. Notice your emotional triggers, right? We talked about emotional triggers a couple weeks ago and identified your triggers. So when you notice them, so make note of your triggers. And then when your emotions rise, try to practice pausing before you respond. And then try one of these techniques that we talked about, or whatever technique that you feel like is going to work for you. Okay. Community members, I need you guys to stick around for a second, but let me see if there are any questions before I come to you guys. So anybody have any questions about emotional, regulating your emotions or anything else, I'll answer them. Again, I will be here every Thursday until, May 30th. I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm going to be here. If you guys would like to join the membership community, you get the opportunity to join us on Zoom. You can actually talk back to me right after I hang up on here. Right, I'm going to continue with them. There are bi-monthly group coaching sessions. There is a private community, right? So we can keep this going in between classes. Like people been asking, like, oh, do you go live more than once a week? And I feel like that's a lot. So yeah, I see some people that be on live literally all day long. And I'm like, what do y'all talk about all day? So yeah, this is the only day I go live. Will there be a EQ 102? I haven't decided yet. I'll see what happens. Can you subscribe now so you can be a part of the convo? So yeah, if you subscribe now, when I get the email, I'll send you the link. How can you build an emotional connection with your partner? I think it starts with making sure that both of you feel safe. You have to be able to talk to each other, making sure that you feel validated. I think the biggest part of an emotional connection is making sure that you both feel seen, heard, and understood. And so whatever that means for the both of you, that is the beginning of the emotional connection, right? That emotional support, letting the person talk, not always jumping in with trying to fix things. Sometimes people just need to talk. Sometimes people just need to hear, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry you're going through that. Rub their back, rub their butt, right? But it's definitely, it has to be a level of vulnerability. It has to be a safe space to start to build that connection. How do you remain calm with uncomfortable emotions? So I don't know that you can remain calm. Your emotions are going to emotion. They're going to present themselves in whatever way that they feel like they need to, right? This is what we kind of talked about today. Giving yourself the space to feel them. How do you separate yourself? Do you need to isolate until you're in a space where you can have those feelings and still interact with others around you? That was a lot of what we talked about today. So I think if you missed the beginning half of the class, I would go back and watch it. This is your first time? Yeah, Jazz, you got to go back in. This is class number 6. So we've been talking about lots of stuff. So I think next week, so I'll do one or two things. I'll let you guys pick. So I was going to do, since we're wrapping up the self-awareness piece, I was going to talk about self-awareness in romantic relationships. And so specifically, what is it that you need in a partner, in a relationship, for it to be healthy for you? And so this works whether you are single or already in a relationship, because if you're single, how do you know when you found the one if you don't know what you're looking for? And if you're already in a relationship, who you are now is not who you were likely when you first started dating your person, or when you first met your person. And so your needs change and they evolve in a relationship. And so it could be a check-in with yourself just to make sure you understand where you are, the things that you need right now, and how do you articulate that to your partner. So that is what I had planned for next week. So what healthy relationship looks like for you. All right. And it's going to be specific to you, right? I don't do you should have these things on your list, right? What is healthy depends on the individual. So what's healthy for me may not be healthy for you, right? You may need somebody to bring you flowers every week. I don't want flowers. I want French fries. I don't want nobody to tell me, oh, I'm sorry you heard that. I'm sorry you feel that way. I want you to help me problem solve. I want you to rub my butt. Like, we all need different things. And so that's what we'll talk about next week. Give you tacos. See, like for me, it's French fries and gummy bears. You can keep the flowers. I don't need them. And so that is what I was thinking about for next week. So you guys saying, yeah, you guys, okay. So that will cuddle time. Yeah, right. So you donuts. See, you got to know what you need, and you got to know how to articulate this to your person. All right, so that's what we will talk about next week then. Any other questions from TikTok before I get out of here? Twizzlers, cummies, and cuddle. Yep. Good conversation. Any other questions? If not, I will see you guys next week. You are welcome. You guys have a good night.